Hi, this is Purina Alpha, and I'm going to be telling you a little bit about the misconceptions that are happening right now with the current civil rights movement. So, first of all, I'm going to talk about America, and the first misconception is that there are mostly rioters, and that's because the media likes to sensationalise things, so is only showing the things that are most dramatic and showing all of the rioting and the looting. But in actuality, about 85% of the protesters are peaceful and are not doing anything or provoking police even, and are just being attacked either way by police officers. And those groups are very separate from those that are rioting and looting, and a lot of them have spoken out against that. And there was a video going around of some protesters stopping people from looting a Target, for example, whereas about 12% of them perhaps are rioters, and the rioters are... It's not that they necessarily just want to destroy for no reason. That's not what it is. It's closer to... if you imagine, for example, queer rights wouldn't be of the position that they are without the Stonewall riots. And, that was a riot that involved, confrontations with police officers due to a group of people being fed up of mistreatment. And that is the same thing that is happening now, with the same kind of effects, and I believe is having and will have just as big an effect on civil rights in modern history. So there is, it's a very valid thing that the rioters are doing. They're just wanting to cause disruption, because if you cause disruption to white people's lives, for example, they can't do what they usually do and just sweep the issue under the rug. They have to face it, and they have to they're forced to look at what's happening and do something about it. So yeah, that's why people are rioting, in my opinion. And also something I wanted to talk about was somebody who was killed in the protests in Tallahassee, Florida. His name was Tony McDade. He was a trans man who was murdered by police during the protests. And a lot of people aren't actually talking about it, so I just really wanted his name to be put out there, and his memory to go on. Another thing that is a kind of universal issue in the UK, in France, in America, is the cropping up of the All Lives Matter movement, which actually doesn't make any sense philosophically, ideologically, because at the moment the socioeconomic situation that people of colour are born into in most countries is not the same. It is as their white peers, basically. They have typically less money, it's more difficult for them to find work, higher rates of unemployment, higher rates of incarceration and things like this. And there are statistics in most countries, well, not most, but a lot of countries in Western Europe and in the Western world, rather, that supports what I'm saying. And so if you imagine the privilege level with racism and all of that coming into play, as well as the economic side of things, black people's privilege level is around here, and white people's is, say, here. So Black Lives Matter wants to do this and have everybody equal, all races equal, everybody having equal rights and equal opportunities and equal treatment in a social sense as well, whereas All Lives Matter just wants to do this, just raise everybody's privilege slightly, i.e. not creating any change and keeping the white people on top. So to be honest, All Lives Matter is, in my opinion, a white supremacist thing to say, to put it blunt. It's wanting to preserve the current socioeconomic power structure that exists in a lot of societies where the white people are on top, and it's, there's no nuance to the conversation. It's really just as simple as that. That's what it means, decoded. Some other things I wanted to talk about are the UK. So recently, I think as recently as last Sunday, that was when the news came out anyway, about a man, black man being, well, I can't really say being killed because it's not been proven, but he died in police custody basically. His name was Simeon Francis. He died in Torquay in Devon, South England. And that was a day after Matt Hancock, the Health Secretary, said on the news that the protests are only a reaction to something that's happening in America, which is completely not true. Racism, both socially and systematically, exists in a huge sense here. I've experienced it quite a lot in my life growing up. Yeah, it's definitely a misunderstanding that people have that racism is something that either happens just in America or just doesn't happen anymore. You know, because people would like to think that society's not like that anymore, but a large part of it is. For example, there are lots of times where, like, I've had my natural hair and stuff like that, walking around Glasgow, Hillhead especially, actually, is quite bad for it, and I've had people, like, stare at me and people, like, do, like, double takes and all sorts of things like that. When I was younger, my first job, when I was 15, was at a pub in the south of England, and I actually got fired from that for having afro hair. So they would tell me that because they have like white conservative customers, that I have to tie my hair back, and I did so like as much as physically possible, and I kept being told that it wasn't good enough, that it wasn't good enough, that it was too messy, and eventually they fired me for it. And then in as recently as 2017, I had a similar issue in another hotel restaurant that I was working at in England, South England, where I kept being told the same thing. And there was another black girl there, the only other black girl. She was from Texas, I believe, and she wore a human hair wig. So she asked them, "Is it just because she's black and I've got like white hair, so you're not asking me the same thing and applying the same rules?" And the managers said, "Yes, it's because she's got a different hair type." And that girl stuck up for me and was fired for it. So, you know, it happens everywhere, everywhere now, you know, and I guess for a lot of people that would not see it because you wouldn't be exposed to it every day, but I am, and I can tell you it's still rife. Another thing that I wanted to talk about was something a lot of people that are at least vaguely familiar with the movement here will know the name Sheku Bayo. So Sheku Bayo is a black man that was murdered by 9 police officers in Fife in Scotland. It was a town called Kirkcaldy, and all 9 of the officers involved in his killing have not been brought to justice at all, and it's been 5 years. It was 2015, so that is something that you will see a lot of petitions for, and if you do, please sign it. It's something that, you know, awareness needs to be raised about this. The next thing is to move on to the currently ongoing debate about statues in Glasgow and in the UK and the world as a whole. So, obviously this all started with the removal of a statue in Bristol, which was a statue of a slave trader who had killed tens of thousands of people that were black slaves, and dumped them in the river at Bristol Harbour. And finally his statue was taken down, and that has since started a spur of petitions and kind of official recognition of the fact that this needs to happen. You know, Sadiq Khan has taken down similar statues in London, and now we are campaigning to have that done in Glasgow as well. We've got a petition on change.org. Please support that petition on change.org. You can find it under Glasgow City Council Remove Statues. If you type that in, it will come up. Please help us with that. Obviously, most people will have seen what happened in George Square on Sunday. The far right are making a counterattack specifically about the statues issue, so this is something that we need to win. So as many signatures as you can get your friends, family to do, it would mean a lot to me and pretty much every black person in Glasgow. This isn't something that a lot of people are immediately aware of, but Glasgow was actually one of the slavery centres of the British Isles back in the day. So Ingram Street was named after a slave trader. Most of the streets that you see in Merchant City especially were built by slaves. Most of Merchant City was built by slaves, actually. So it's not that this is like a distant issue. This could not be more on our front doorstep. So it's something that really needs to be dealt with. You know, these conversations are happening all around England, and they also need to happen in Scotland because it's by no means innocent.